Good afternoon. This is Dyke Hendrickson, and I am the host of the podcast Life Along the Merrimack. Today we have a guest, Sean Reardon, who is a native Newburyporter, who is on the school board and is running for mayor. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Dyke, thanks for having me.
I just wanted to start out because this podcast is about the Merrimack River, the history and health. And, when you were growing up, the Clean Water Act, of 1972 was starting to improve the river. The water was getting cleaner. And so I wanted to ask you, have you done much on the river when you were younger? Did you fish or did you go out in boats, or was there an activity level there?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I think we're so lucky living here on the Merrimack. It's such a great resource, and it's just, it's great to take advantage of that. So we weren't boaters growing up, but I always had friends who were boaters. So I spent a lot of time out on friends' boats usually. My parents were both teachers, so they were pretty busy most of the time with either camps or school or, but we used to try to take advantage of being on the water as much as we could. And we tried to fish as much as we could too. Not huge fishermen, but we'd go out, definitely a few times a summer, between the artichoke and the river, we'd get out and do that. And once I got older, it was great that I had friends that you could go out and explore the river on your own, go out to High Rock. We do tubing on the river. Again, I just think we're very lucky, living where we are and having the Merrimack right here.
Well, they always say if you don't own your own boat, learn how to be a good guest. As an adult, you bring the beer. When you were younger, you just try to clean up or be polite.
Yeah, when I was younger too, I was a dock master down on the docks for the city. So I did that for a summer too, which was great, just to interact with all the boaters coming in, learning that part of it, tying boats up and getting people off and working for the harbor master. That was a lot of fun too.
Well, Cashman Park, I've spent a lot of time there doing different things. And, that's the busiest state park in the state in terms of launching vessels. So that's an asset too.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, no, they're nonstop down there.
What other memories do you have of Newburyport in terms of growing up? What were you active in? I think you played tennis, because I played tennis with your father quite a bit back in the day. Yeah,
no, I have a lot, again, growing up here, I think I just have a unique perspective, watching Newburyport change over the years. My grandfather was fire chief, the first permanent fire chief hired in town back in the early 60s. So that was a big part of my life, being in and out of the firehouse. That's back when the fire station was down where the Firehouse Performing Arts Center is now. So that was just, in center of town. And it was always, always being out of there. I also grew up right down the street from Mayor Dick Sullivan too at that time. So I was in and out of his office a lot. So just kind of being in and out of the city and watching, downtown revitalize was really a big part of growing up. I mentioned my dad was a teacher, so, I was constantly tagging along with him to practices and games. I played basketball and I played all sports growing up. Pioneer League was a big part of my life when I was a little kid. And then as I got older, I kind of gravitated towards tennis, and I always played basketball. But, again, we're lucky in Newburyport. We have, parks that kids can go play in. And, I grew up in a time where we were always just outside and finding, a group of kids to play with and finding things to do. So, now that I have my own 3 kids growing up here, I just, I feel very fortunate for that.
Well, talking about schools, you have been on the school board for several years, and maybe you can talk about, what inspired you to run for school board and perhaps what positive changes you've seen in the school system since you've been active.
Yeah, no, I think we got our schools moving in the right direction. So it's been 4 years now since I joined the school committee. I got on because a school committee member had moved out of the city, so a seat became vacant in the middle of a term. So I was able to apply and run for that position, and it was a joint vote by the school committee and city council, and I was lucky enough to win by a 13-3 vote. So I've really enjoyed my 4 years on there. I think it's a perfect fit for me as far as my background. I've been working with schools for the past 16 years all around Massachusetts for an education company. And I also, again, was a teacher for a short time too here in Newburyport and Triton. So I think I had the right background to kind of jump on the school committee and really, bring some experience and bring some expertise. But collectively, I think we've really done a lot of good things these past 4 years. We've hired I think a great leader in Sean Gallagher as our new superintendent. We're about to start on our new 5-year strategic plan, which I think is really going to set up that roadmap for the next 5 years of where we think we are as a school district and where we want to take it. And and little things like we implemented later start times for the schools, which I think was great. And that was a parent-led movement that had kind of stalled over a number of years. And then once Superintendent Gallagher came on, he found a way to make it happen. And and personally, now I'll have all 3 kids at the middle school Mullen this year, and they'll all start school at the same time, so they can all walk to school together.
That's
so
convenient.
That's pretty great too.
Well, I think you were in publishing and school book publishing for a while. Were you not, Sean? Is that what you
I still am. Yep. I work for a big company out of Boston, but I cover everything K-12, and I work with some districts here in Massachusetts, and then also some charter schools all across the country.
When you've been on the school board now, and you've been around the city your whole life, what were your thoughts when you were considering running for mayor? You announced early, and what inspired you to make a run for the mayor's office? Which, if you're listening, Mayor Don Holliday is not running again. There are 3 candidates. Sean is one of them. What were your reasons, Sean?
Yeah, honestly, Dyke, I thought about doing this my whole life. I just didn't know when the timing would be right to do it. I ran for city council a few years back and lost a really close race, which was discouraging. But getting on the school committee, I still wanted to be involved. I was involved in some other city-led programs and projects that took place in between those years. So, looking back, I was like, well, I'm going to do this at some point. What should I do? So when COVID hit, I decided to go back to school and get my master's in public administration. I'm taking 2 classes now, and I've got my final 2 classes to take this fall, which is great. That'll happen hopefully right before I take office. And I knew I wanted to do this. I wanted to give back to my city. This place means obviously a great deal to me, and I've chosen to raise my family here as well. My wife's from Newburyport. So, seeing Newburyport and wanting to really just be a part of making Newburyport the best it can be. And when Donna Holliday decided not to run after 12 years, I think actually I bring the perfect set of skills to take that next step and be the next mayor. I'm not involved in her administration right now. I'm not on the city council, which I think they've had a kind of a rocky couple years as far as working together. So I think I bring a fresh perspective. Hopefully, I can bring a lot of new energy, new ideas, and hopefully a new way of doing things.
How do you think Mayor Holliday did? She's been in office for about a decade, and I would mention I was a reporter for the Daily News for about 5 years, so I had a pretty close gaze at things. How do you think the mayor did, Sean?
Sure, yeah. I mean, and Mayor Holliday is it's going to be her 12th year that she's finishing right now. So I mean, that's the longest run of any mayor of Newburyport, which is really impressive. I think she's got a lot done. I know it's not an incredibly easy job. But I know she's definitely, checked off a few things off the list. I credit her with the senior center and the Bresnahan School getting done. That was a massive project. On the community level, I was involved in that a little bit with the Port Pride campaign. So, I mean, I would say that is a highlight, but she's definitely, she's done a lot. She's added to the Parks Department, which I served on the Parks Commission before she took office. She was chair of Budget and Finance when I was on the Parks Commission, and then became mayor. And that Parks Department was built out, built from scratch. And so I think there's a lot more we can do for our parks as well. But she's had a great run. I think after 12 years, I think everybody should want somebody new in there and take a look at what we're doing and decide, with a fresh set of eyes, and decide, are there things we can do better? Are there efficiencies to be made? I mean, how can we approach things in a different direction? And I think, working with the city council is going to be, one of my top priorities. Like I said, I think we've stalled a little bit the last few years as far as that goes. And I'm glad to see we're going to have 3 new members on the city council, but I'm also very disappointed that, we're not going to have any contested races. So, again, hopefully my candidacy and hopefully moving on as mayor, maybe I can inspire some other people to want to step up and serve the city, because I think, there's no greater service to your city than stepping up for public service. So,
well, this is the podcast Life Along the Merrimack. I'm host Dyke Hendrickson. I'm talking with Sean Reardon, who is running for mayor. This is 96.3 Joppa Radio and Channel 9 local cable TV. And talking about Joppa, Sean, one of the great parks in town, I think that's been improved in recent years, is the park at Joppa.
Sure, it's beautiful.
You're able to get in with small boats. There's a lot. It's a sedentary park mostly. You can sit there and see. But you mentioned parks. It seems like the parks have come along in recent years.
Yeah, they have. I do think they have a long way to go too. We have 27 parks here in Newburyport, which is a crazy number to think of. But I do think it's we're designating areas, parks that typically weren't before, but it's a lot, and I still think they're trying to do a lot with probably very little. So I mean, parks is definitely something I'd like to look into a little bit more and seeing what more we can do. It's not just about, I don't think, maintenance and upkeep. It's kind of having a vision of what you want those parks to be. I think Drop is beautiful. That project started when I was on the Parks Commission and finished after I was gone. But God, what a beautiful, beautiful area. But that's also one that needs a little work. That walkway along the wall there at Joppa is pretty rough. I was down there the other day and someone actually fell right in front of me. So again, it kind of fits into a lot of what I've been talking about and hearing at the doors is neighborhood infrastructure, and I think that's just part of it. But I think as a city we can do a lot better in keeping up some of these areas in town.
When you mention the needs of the city, that might be one. Maybe you can mention a couple other areas that you'd like to improve. Now, from my days on the city council or watching the city council, you always heard about, roads and sidewalks. So that's probably one. But what do you assess the needs to be in the community now, Sean?
Yeah, and I think this election's a little bit different because you don't have that one massive issue that's kind of leading the charge, like the garage probably was a few years back. But I do think there are a few things, and it's funny, I've been knocking on doors since April, and streets and sidewalks are still the number one thing that people mention, and it's just one of those things that's not going to go away. I know some city councilors tried to pass a bond issue last year to try to take a bigger dent into the streets and sidewalks. So I'd like to revisit that. I just don't think, Chapter 90 money is just not going to cut it as far as we're just going to keep getting further and further behind. So that's really one of the things on the top of my list. And again, I think it's a quality of life issue. I think it's a safety issue in a lot of places too. Some of the other issues that I'm thinking about, it's funny, zoning has been mentioned a lot around town, which is not something I was thinking that I'd be hearing at the doors, but and that goes a lot of different ways. I'm hearing it from people who have lived there here their whole lives. Maybe they're living in the houses that they grew up in, and all these houses are getting torn down them around town, and bigger ones are getting put in their place, and they're just concerned that their taxes keep going up. I'm also hearing it in looking at Waterfront West, which is that just came out a few weeks ago in the Daily News that they were thinking about putting a 40B down there, 235 units. People are concerned about that. I think the city councilors worked on that.
How do you feel about that, Sean? I mean, we did have the team for a while. I think they're transferring, or at least it appears, transferring the leadership on that program. Were you in favor of Waterfront West? Well,
I think a couple of years ago, they came forth with a plan that I think was in the ballpark. I think that was something that the city could have still negotiated. And unfortunately, the city council didn't act at the time to kind of shore up the zoning in that area for the Waterfront West overlay district. And now here we are. We were vulnerable to a 40B, and that's exactly what they did after, hearing the rumors for months and months. They came out and said, yeah, that's what we're thinking of. And the majority of Newburyporters I talk to are in favor of some sensible development in that area. But, it's got to be something that works for Newburyport.
How are you defining 40B, Sean?
So just that 40B that they can put just units in there, so they can bypass a lot of the zoning restrictions because they're saying.
Mean low income? Does it mean affordable?
That means I think it's 12% of that will be affordable, and then the rest, that's all they have to do as long as they hit that. But 235 units in that area, that just seems like a staggering amount. Again, for me, and again, whoever mayor is, they're not going to get to pick what goes there. I would love to see some sort of boutique hotel or a conference center that could, be a place between Boston and Portsmouth and Gloucester that could bring business into the city. I think that's something that would just serve so many different levels of Newburyport. But again, I can't pick that. But again, a lot of it with that area is around density, because it is such a confined space, and you don't want to put too much down there. And I think that was some of the hang up before. But
one thing that people want from our reporting days and just hearing it, I think a lot of people would like a hotel in town, if there's a wedding, if there's a funeral.
Absolutely. Yeah, we lack that so much.
I mean, we do have a few places, Garrison Inn and other places, but this is, people who call me from out of town say, well, what's the hotel in town or motel? And they're surprised that we don't have a go-to.
Right. Yeah. Amesbury has two that they've just built recently. So yeah, it's been a need for a long time. It's been a need back to the 70s. And I mentioned my father stopped by earlier, but he brought that up as well, how that was a big talk. It's been a big talk for years. So again, I think that place would be perfect for that. And again, think of the business it would bring in, think of the patrons it would bring to our businesses and restaurants downtown, with each event, with each conference that comes into town. It's really needed.
One thing I'm curious about when the voters go to the polls in November, I was talking about this and I said, well, Sean went to schools here. And they said, well, people his age, and I'm thinking you're in your early to mid 40s, probably aren't living in Newburyport. Maybe they can't afford a place here. Have you found that? Are a lot of your classmates in town, or maybe there's no definitive answer to that?
Yeah, no, and I have a brother and sister, obviously, who I grew up as well, and so I see a mix of kids that grew up here still in town. I know there's not a ton from my class that live here, but again, I think of the 4 years I'm in school, there's enough of us, but definitely, it's a challenge to raise a family here right now. I know I struggled for a long time. My wife and I bought our first house right before the housing crash around 2007. And, we hung in there. I worked 3 jobs. I've worked in most of the restaurants in town at some point. Again, we struggled for a bit and hung in there, and we were able to stay. But, a lot of people haven't been able to. So I think most people would love to come back to their hometown, but, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, although I was thinking just, off the cuff, perhaps your parents probably met many of the people in town. I mean, your father, Neil Reardon, was a teacher and a coach for many years. So I would think that your name is well known in town at the very least.
Well, there's not as many natives around as there used to be, but my dad had a great career, and he served a lot of kids and parents in town. So again, my grandfather being on the fire department, and we have some pretty deep roots here. I mean, I'm a 5th generation Newburyporter, which I'm extremely proud of. And so we've seen Newburyport through a lot. And, again, I think we're ready for that next generation of Newburyporters to step up and lead too. And that's why I'm taking this leap.
But one issue that occurs frequently in discussions is Plum Island. Of course, Newburyport and Newbury both share quite a bit of the acreage there. And, the idea of erosion and storms is always difficult and has been for decades. Is there an easy answer to this, Sean? If you
No.
were there, is there a leadership role there for you?
Yeah, no, I think there is, but I don't think there's any easy answer. I mean, again, I've been out to Reservation Terrace on Plum Island a number of times already. I know Mark Wright lives right there as well, who's going to be one of our new city councilors. It's scary, and it's difficult sometimes when you pay taxes and you don't think those tax dollars are helping you, save your home and affecting your quality of life. The problem with Plum Island is that there's so many different entities that are involved there. You're dealing with federal, you're dealing with state, and you're dealing with local. I think what you can just do is try to manage it as best as we can, and hopefully there is a solution. And I hope to take a leadership and be an advocate for our residents there. But I know it's not an easy fix.
How about clean water in the Merrimack River? After heavy rainstorms, there is a lot of effluent in the river. I think this is known. Of course, it's a city problem, it's a state problem, it's a federal problem. Is there a leadership role that the council can take in doing what they can? And I would mention that Newburyport actually does have a good sewage treatment plant.
Absolutely.
We don't let effluent go out the plant as Lowell, Lawrence, and Havel do. Now, this is a fact, isn't?
Yep.
This isn't just me talking.
Yep.
Can a city take a leadership role there?
Sure, I think they should, and I think maybe it comes down. And I don't know if I don't think it's a council issue, but I think it's working with your state representatives, your state senators, and it's also maybe partnering up with other communities on the Merrimack that are facing this because of some of the larger, more urban cities that are continuously dumping overflow sewage into the Merrimack River, and it's just floating down to our end. I think Newburyport, it wasn't easy for us to build and maintain the new water treatment plant. So that was an expense that Newburyport took on because they knew they had to do it. And so I think it's time for some of those other communities to do more of their share. So yeah, I'll definitely be a loud voice as far as clean water and sewage overflow in Newburyport.
Well, I noticed several debates have been announced. The other candidates for mayor, Charlie Tantar, and Warren Russo. What do you feel your strength is when you would go into a debate with these two competitors?
That's a good question. I don't know much about Mr. Russo. I know he lives out on Plum Island. I know he writes some letters to the paper sometimes, but I've never had a chance to meet him. I really don't know his background very well. I've worked with Mr. Tontar for a number of years. He started out as a Ward 4 counselor, then he ran for at-large at the last election. Honestly, I think this first debate that we're going to have Tuesday, it's just going to be, kind of answering, topics just like we're doing here. So I think my strength is that I've lived here a long time. I've been involved in the city a long time, and I think I bring a wide range of opinions and knowledge to some of the issues that are going around here in Newburyport. I'm anxious to hear what the other two have to say as well. There hasn't been a lot of reporting on that so far. And again, I came out so early, so I feel like I'm on year 3 of running for mayor here in Newburyport. So again, I've been knocking on doors since April. So I think I have a pretty good hand.
Knocking on doors, and thank you for coming to my house. We weren't there at the time, but you did leave a little poster. Do you like walking through the neighborhood, Sean, or does it become exhausting and not much fun to do?
No, it's fun. I love talking to people. It's funny. Knocking on doors can be hit or miss. There's some days you catch people at home, and some days you get to a lot of doors. Other days you don't get to many doors, but you had probably 5 20-minute conversations within there that you really got some great insight for some people. So it's just interesting the level of involvement, I guess, in Newburyport that you see from residents door to door. How interested they are in what's going on, or what kind of.
Do people seem up on the issue, Sean? No one really drills down on everything, but from your
right, I think everyone. I would say for the most part, Dyke, I think it's funny. I think some people are, honestly, we live in a great place. So, I think everyone realizes that. So, and those people sometimes have their one issue that they're really concerned about. I think that's why probably streets and sidewalks come up so much, because, they'll walk me out to their, out on the West End, they'll walk me out to their sidewalk that hasn't been touched in 50 years and half of it's got grass grown over it. So, I think everyone's kind of level of, being tuned into Newburyport is a little different, but I think everyone really agrees that this is a great place to live.
Well, this is Dyke Hendrickson, and this is the podcast Life Along the Merrimack. My guest is Sean Reardon, who's running for mayor. He's also on the school board. And this is 96.3 Joppa Radio and local Channel 9 cable TV. What would you say your 3 top platform pieces are, Sean? We've talked about a number of things, but just give us 3 that you are high on your list.
Yeah, I would say probably top 3. I would say definitely are having an infrastructure plan in place for streets and sidewalks and safety. I think that's something that we can do right now and really, help make lives better for a lot of people here in Newburyport. We have way too many neighborhoods that have been neglected for far too long. I think my second one is going to be our schools, because we're going to come out with that new 5-year strategic plan. I think we need to keep supporting our schools, supporting our teachers. I think they've had a very challenging year and a half, and I think we need to come out of this and really support them and see how we can move our kids forward. And
have you heard if there are going to be masks this fall? Keep seeing different things, so I don't really know the answer.
Yeah, so we haven't had a meeting because we take July off, and that we have a retreat coming up next week. So I haven't spoken to Superintendent Gallagher about that. What I'm seeing on the state level is that they're probably going to kind of wait and see, but it's definitely a possibility that at least for younger kids that they'll have to come back to school with masks. I know my daughter's going into 8th grade. She got vaccinated, one of the first days she could. So I think we'll have to take definitely a survey of the kids and see where we are. And again, the information coming from the state is not always incredibly reliable or with a lot of direction. So we'll have to wait and see how the state responds and how the.
Well, as a parent, I just wanted to ask you, as a parent, has it been frustrating to explain to the kids? And there were a lot of different directions that were being given at a given time. You got through it, of course, but has it been difficult?
Yeah, we got through it, and I definitely credit our teachers and administrators for navigating us through a tough year, and I credit the kids because they didn't miss a beat. Whatever they needed to do, and especially I think the goal was to get back for in-person learning. I think we all agree that's what is best for kids, and that's all I wanted as a school board member was, hey, let's we got to do what's best for kids. So whatever decisions are made or whatever directives we have from the state, it's going to be difficult. And I think every parent's going to have, some difficult discussions with their kids, because we went through that. And then now we've had this summer where, I don't think we've touched a mask, at least in my house, we haven't. And then, the thought that we have to go back to that is kind of heartbreaking for those kids. But, they did it at the end of last year, and they were able to get some really quality, the last, 10 to 15 weeks of school with in-person instruction. I know that really benefited my kids. So, again, I think they realize that they want to be in school, and they're going to do whatever they need to do to stay in school.
Well, this has been great, Sean. I have to run off myself now. I've just learned that I'm manning a booth for the Merrimack River Watershed Council, which is right on the bullnose there. So I hadn't expected to do it, but I am the outreach historian. So I wanted to thank you, Sean, for being here. Do you have a final word you would mention as the fall comes along, school is coming, an election is coming? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be a busy fall. I would just, first, everyone get out and vote this fall. We're going to have a primary on September 21st, and then we're going to have an election on November 2nd. Get to know the candidates. Again, I'm always available. Check out my website, Sean Reardon from mayor.com. Or you can check on Facebook. You can find me on there as well. My phone number's on there. I'm happy to meet with any residents and talk about their concerns. I'm excited to be your next mayor. This is not something I took lightly to run for, and hopefully I get to meet you on the campaign trail.
Great. Okay, well, we were talking with Sean Reardon, running for mayor, member of the school board. I'm Dyke Hendrickson, the host of the podcast, Life Along the Merrimack, 96.3, Joppa Radio, and Channel 9 local cable. Sean, thank you very much for being here.
All right, Dyke. Thanks for having me.
See you next time.
Have a good week. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.